Welcome to 1983. Those of you who have been following this series know that what I'm trying to do is to reconnect with my past, dragging up a few memories of the things that I was doing, things that were important, what I was thinking, the people I was spending time with. And then I'm integrating that with my love of music, which has been my passion since the early 1970s. And then getting to the point where I say, okay, if someone puts me on the spot and I have to say which are the top 20 albums of the year, these are the top 20. So I'm going to do the top 20 albums of 1983 on this occasion. At the beginning of this video, I showed a few images of some concert tickets from 1982 because I've mentioned this before, is that what I try and do is in these videos is maybe integrate a little bit of memorabilia. And I used to keep all my tickets, and I just ran out of tickets. I had this folder with these tickets, and I thought, well, where were they? And I did mention it a little while back, and I started digging into the into my garage and found a box of tickets and diaries, journals, with tickets pasted in them. And really interesting, I uncovered these journals from well over 30 years ago. I completely forgot I had them. I thought they were lost in a house move or something like that, and I thought, oh my goodness, they're there, and there's just a pile of them. And at the end of the 1982 video, I mentioned being done by a girlfriend who'd introduced me to ballet, my appreciation of ballet and ballet music, and kind of really important. And that relationship straddled 1982 and the early part of 1983, and it was really really interesting. I learned a couple of things in uncovering these journals. Now, firstly, these journals it's never been a routine for me. It's a process of catharsis, is that if I'm going through a complex time or a difficult time, writing to organize my thoughts has kind of been my thing. And sometimes I make videos today because of that sort of reason. So there is no full history of that's been written of what I was doing year by year. There's like a couple of months here, a couple of months there, with 3-4 year gaps in between. So it's just completely lucky that I had uncovered quite detailed entries for this period of 1982 and 1983. And when I think about, kind of what do I learn? A couple of things that I learned, really. One, that relationship that I mentioned at the end of the last video. It was two young people kind of fell in love, infatuated with each other, except to say that my infatuation for her outlived her infatuation with me. And of course, for a while I was really devastated about that. But you get over all of these things. And now, one of the things I really learned in looking at these journals is that it's me, but it's not me. It's over 40 years ago, and I'm writing stuff down, and I'm reading this thinking, did I write that? Is that me who's talking? And really interesting. I don't know whether, I had a little bit of correspondence with people on YouTube, and I've spoken to a couple of friends about people who write journals and so on. And one or two people have said that they did write them. They're embarrassing to read, and they want to burn them. And I don't know whether I'm going to burn mine, but what I've read so far is kind of interesting. And I was just normal, just a normal young guy who was trying to work out what was going on. And so yeah, so it's me, but it's not me. And I think when I read them, even though it was a good and ultimately not a great time for me personally, it was such a thrill to kind of read this stuff. It's almost like I suggest, it's like a different person, and any of you out there who have written journals, my experience has been that what a gift to be able to just out of the blue after 30 odd years or 40 years to go back and read what was going on in that sort of detail. And I'm so happy to have uncovered it. And of course, all that relationship stuff, it's just complete. The perspective is there after 40 years. I'd be a stranger to her, she'd be a stranger to me. And we got all these people in our past, haven't we? Where we think they were important at times, and in our memory, we've got an image of them and what was going on. And no, that image is old. So to go back and then kind of directly tap into what was going on at the time, oh, what an interesting experiment. There's not so much more that follow throughout the 80s, except more wars about making poor decisions with women and so on. Maybe I'll come back to that sort of thing later on. But all's well that ends well, as it were. So anyway, so at the time, that was 1983, I was still at Polytechnic, as they called it then. They called it Northumbria University now, and I was studying marketing, learning a lot about marketing communications in particular, understanding public relations, and really it was the bedrock of my understanding of how all communications, all official communications, are intentional. There are no accidents, and it's fed and supports how I process media communications, how I process political communications, and propaganda and stuff like that. So right the way back in 82 and 83, I was learning stuff that's still useful to me today, which was absolutely fantastic. So my learning during that year was great. Other things that happened during the year, I did a 50-mile charity bike ride on an old steel-framed bike from Carlisle to Newcastle on the old Roman road, which, if you know it, is like a wilderness. It's high on the hill, moorland, and it's pretty wild. But that was when 50 miles had to be done on old kit rather than carbon fiber bikes and so on today. So that was great. I did some bar work. I was working at a pub called the Bacchus in Newcastle to supplement the fact that I had barely no money. These old journals, I was reading some of these entries, and it seemed to be like every couple of weeks I was going to the bank asking for an overdraft on my overdraft. But still, I managed to buy records, which was great. A lot of 12-inch singles being bought at that particular time. So yeah, it was a transition year. It was coming to the end of my studies, and then thinking, what am I going to do next? And so 84 became a very, very important year, and I'll come to that in due course. But shall we talk about some records? I think we should talk about the also-rans first. There's a bit of an array behind me here. So you've got Touched by the Eurythmics, which is a great pop album, introducing the Style Council, Paul Weller's first effort, kind of an extended EP, mini LP they called it. Pink Floyd's Final Cut, still good, obviously pales into insignificance compared to their other materials. North Marine Drive by Ben Watt, so half of Everything But the Girl. That's a really great, lovely album. Peter Hamill, Patience. Spandau Ballet's True, and True and all that sort of stuff. Now we think it's really trite 80s pop music, but it was kind of really fresh back in the day, and a lot of great singles, really good. Susie and the Banshees, Nocturne, which is a great double live album, has the fantastic Israel on it. ZZ Top, Eliminator. ABC, Beauty Stab. Culture Club, Colour by Numbers, an absolutely fabulous pop album again with Boy George with a fantastic voice. And this one here, which didn't make my top 20, and that is Porcupine by Ego and the Bunnymen. And it didn't make it because it's just relentless. The album prior to this, Heaven Up Here, was full of light and shade. And the singles from this are great, and I've got the 12-inch singles from that. And the non-album track, Never Stop, was a brilliant 12-inch single as well. But it's kind of relentless. It doesn't have that slowing down, just one banger after another, which becomes a little bit tiresome. So it's in there. It's not made my top 20. So let's get on to my top 20. Number 20 of the best albums of 1983 is Speaking in Tongues by Talking Heads. Now, I came to Talking Heads with more songs about buildings and food, their second album, which I bought cheap, and I didn't really get it. And I was never a big fan of Talking Heads at the time, but retrospectively I've gone back and absolutely adored them by the closing albums of their career. Absolutely fantastic band. This is great. It sounds to me a little bit like early 1980s King Crimson. The rhythms, the invention is fantastic. Have we got Eno involved in this? I think Eno at the time certainly knew Robert Fripp and knew David Byrne. It just feels like his influence is on this album, but this has got the classics, Slippery People, Girlfriend is Better, and This Must Be the Place, Naive Melody. But it's a great, great, vibrant album. Number 19, a bit of a blast from the past genre-wise, and that was the new wave, the neo-prog of Marillion and Script for a Jester's Tear. Now, those Genesis fans like us, carried a torch for that 80s period, so that 80s, that Gabriel period Genesis. And here, it's just replicated. And I've just, in this album cover here, so you can see the album cover, and it's got the lyrics on the inside, but I've stuffed in here a 12-inch single, which is Market Square Heroes, which on the B-side has the 17-minute and 40-second version, well, it's the only version, of Grendel. And Grendel is such a rip-off of Genesis Supper's Ready. But, this sounds a bit teenage now after all these years, and Fish was always an overwrought singer, but he was the main lyricist, big charisma and so on. But it's got fantastic melodies in here. There's no shortage of ambition, even though it's incredibly derivative. So that's my number 19. Number 18 is an artist I saw in the early 90s in Warwick University. I can't remember much about the gig, but this is Fame and Wealth by Loudon Wainwright III. Much derided because his humour gets the better of him. He's super smart. His lyrics are great, but he can write some really, really touching material. And here, what have we got? That 5 years old is gorgeous. Reader and Advisor is Richard Thompson, who plays guitar on this album. Fairport Conventions, Richard Thompson, of course. But yeah, and some Demon Records. Yeah, good album. Not his best, but a good album of the year. Now, in the early 1980s, remember, in the 70s, we had kind of hard rock, heavy metal came along, progressive rock came along, punk, post-punk, new wave, the new romantics, synthesizer pop, and so on and so forth. And I think as we got a couple of years into kind of that new romantic stuff, there was a demand for something that felt a little bit more organic. And this is the Roddy Frame as their camera album debut, Highland Hard Rain. And this is Roddy, Scottish singer, songwriter, very young. I think he was 19 when he released this, but it's a very accomplished piece of work. Kind of upbeat, acoustic guitar, based pop. I think one of the remarkable things on this album, I think the drummer is Dave Ruffy, who played drums with the Ruts, one of my favourite punk bands ever, maybe my favourite. But it's amazing that he showed up on this album. So that's a good, and Roddy Frame wants to do more great albums to come. That was number 17. Number 16, I cannot believe it, I do not have this on vinyl. What a story. I haven't got this on vinyl, but this is Murmur by R.E.M., the debut album by R.E.M. And I was to see them a couple of years later, several times in fact. But Murmur, at the time, summed up Michael Stipe's vocals, famously summed up his vocals, but great. It's a bit like the Jesus and Mary chain, although in a sense that's kind of all feedback and so on and so forth. But behind this noise, there are gorgeous melodies, and they're here absolutely in spades. So that's a fantastic album, of which you'll know. And some people have been doing this thread, which is the top 10, top 20, top 25 American bands of all time. And REM comes out very highly in that regard. Right, number 15. Right, 15 is War by U2. And this is the start of their preachy phase, because it opens with Sunday Bloody Sunday. And I used to see them quite a bit in the 1980s, and it got, you got a bit sick of it, even though its message was absolutely sound. But this also has the fantastic New Year's Day on this one. What else do we have? Drowning Man, Two Hearts Beat as One, Surrender, and 40. Yeah, a great album, no doubt about it. New Year's Day, I wish I had the 12-inch version, by the way. It was an extended version. That is absolutely fabulous as well. But no doubt Gav Axman Spins has got that one. But this is a great album. So that's number 15. Number 14, talking of organic music, this is I think it was termed later, maybe at the time, as a cowpunk album. And it's a mini album by Jason and the Scorchers called Fervor. There was this Americana phase that blew up in the early to mid 1980s, and this band was a prominent member of that little movement. Really good. This album for me is all about its opener, the best version ever of Absolutely Sweet Marie by Bob Dylan. Absolute super high energy. It's fantastic. Turn that up to 11. It's amazing. So yeah, that is number 14. The last band I saw live released an album in 1983. It was their second album, and my favourite track from it, the buggers didn't play it, and that is New Order and Power, Corruption and Lies. And my favourite track is Your Silent Face, which is epic. Absolutely epic. So there's not much to show here. Typical, really good New Order album. I said something about New Order in my last video. Not my favourite band, but Your Silent Face is amazing. So that's number 13. Number 12 is an album that I didn't discover until later, although I'd been into Roxy music and I knew Phil Collins played on Another Green World. But I picked up this album some years later, and that's Brian Eno's Apollo. And this, in fact, is the extended edition, which came out just several years ago, 2019, 5 years ago. So yeah, this has got Daniel Lanois on guitar, making some great Daniel Lanois-esque sounds all over this album. What's fantastic about this album, track 5, isn't it track 5? An Ending, Ascent, is one of the most gorgeous pieces of music you'll ever likely to hear. It's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, that's Brian Eno. Number 11 was a bit of a throwback. Remember, I'd worked before I'd gone to Poly to study, and in those years I was, putting on the fancy jackets and going clubbing, and I still have a soft spot for that period, and the albums of that period. And this one, I'd never say this in the vinyl community, but here you go. It's Can't Slow Down by Lionel Richie. What a brilliant, brilliant pop album. Awful cover. But yeah, great album. All Night Long. Stuck on You, Running with the Night, and the mawkish Hello, which the video was horrendous. But if you try and put that video out of your mind and just think about the sentiment and Hello and the way he delivers it, it's lovely. So yeah, it's not a guilty pleasure. It is a really good album. If you like Michael Jackson, well, why wouldn't you like Lionel Richie? I mean, Oliver the Commodores as well from the 70s, fantastic. Something very different. I bought this artist's album Blue Valentine, and this is his big departure from those croony years, and that was, of course, Swordfish Trombones. This is where he started to hit everything and the kitchen sink. The rhythms are all over the place. There are songs, some great beauty here, but there's some great dissonance as well. And this was to, he took basically a left turn in his career, and this became the blueprint, I guess, for just about everything he's done ever since. Yeah, but what a great, great album. That was number 10. Number 9 is the Robert Cray Band and Bad Influence. Now on the cover here it says 1984, but checking with online, I think this is a 1983 album. So maybe this is a reissue on Demon Records, and maybe it came out on an American label at the end of 83. So I'm putting in the 1983. So yeah, this is number 9. Opening track, Phone Booth. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. Robert Cray, if you don't know him, great blues guitarist, very, very soulful voice. So it's kind of blues and soul. Really smooth, this guy, really smooth, but they were very, very good. I was to see him a few years later at Newcastle University. But the title track is amazing. Gotta Make a Comeback. Yeah, really good, very good album. He was to do better, but that's absolutely excellent. Number 8. I'd lost quite a bit of interest in this artist because he just changed his style so much all the way through the 1970s. And you'll know who I'm talking about. And of course he had his Berlin trilogy, which Low was great, Heroes was better. Wasn't so keen on Lodger, but he came back with his kind of pop persona with Let's Dance, featuring Nile Rodgers, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and others. What can we say about this album? Let's have a look. So yeah, you've got Modern Love, absolutely fantastic. Criminal World, which was a song that must have delivered the pensions for those that made it to retirement from the band Metro. Peter Godwin, Duncan Brown, and Sean Lyons. Let's Dance, of course, is the title track. China Girl's amazing. Cat People, again, as well. Yeah, of its time, but sounds absolutely amazing. Leaps from the speakers. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. That's Bowie, number 8. Number 7 is Randy Newman and Trouble in Paradise. Another brilliant album. The only downside with this album is that his 70s material sounds a little bit sparse, a little bit economical in the instrumentation. It's more acoustic based piano, of course, mostly. But here you've got a bit of an 80s sheen and synthesizers being introduced. So some of the stuff on here sounds a little bit dated, but got some of the best of Randy Newman here. I Love LA, Christmas in Cape Town. The blues is gorgeous. Same Girl is very, very simple, moving. My Life is Good, it's fun. Oh yeah, it's good album maybe. So that's Randy Newman, number 7. Number 6 is another American singer-songwriter. Again, suffering, if it is the right word to say, suffering with an 80s sound coming into his music, but this is still a wonderful album, and that's Lawyers in Love by Jackson Browne. What do we got? Lawyers in Love is a great opening track. On the Day slows it right down. Oh, just gorgeous. Downtown was a bit more of a typical FM radio hit. Tender as the Night is a famous song. Say It Isn't True about nuclear war is wonderful as well. So this is a great album as well. So that is number 6. Number 5, a British artist that I was seeing quite a bit during this period, and he was to become a big influence on the kind of left-wing politics, red wedge kind of scene that was going on in the UK, involving the likes of Paul Weller and the Style Council and so on. And that is the Wonderful then, not so wonderful now, but brilliant at the time. Billy Bragg coming on stage, ex-squaddy, rough around the edges, beat up electric guitar, barking his lyrics at the audience. But what a great songwriter. And that sound of just him and an electric guitar is fantastic. When he started to introduce much more instrumentation later on in the 1980s, and then ever since, I lost a lot of my interest in him. But he sounds truly unique on this. And this album here, another kind of a mini album really, includes his song A New England, which was famously covered by Kirsty MacColl. But what have we got here? The Milkman of Human Kindness, To Have and Have Not, the super kind of sparse quiet, The Man in the Iron Mask is wonderful. Yeah, really fantastic. Billy Bragg in the mid-1980s was brilliant. Number 4, an artist that had been around since the late 60s or, as a solo artist in a band before then, delivered this album, which was kind of most big instrumental feel in this album, kind of a gorgeous, like almost quite ambient sounding, very atmospheric music is incredible, and that's Inarticulate Speech of the Heart by the great Van Morrison. Fantastic album. So there you go, that's number 4. Number 3 is all but an instrumental album by the brilliant Mark Knopfler, and that's Local Hero. All the more reflective parts of the Dire Straits style of music extended with as instrumentals on this particular album. This is super memorable to me because even though it's a soundtrack to a fantastic film, Local Hero, one of my top 10 films of all time, it's also the song Going Home, or the tune Going Home, which closes the album, is a song that is played at St James's Park when Newcastle United run out. And when I used to drive, I used to have a season ticket at Newcastle for a long time, driving up from the Midlands every couple of weeks in the football season. I used to kind of time it where when I was driving across the Tyne Bridge, I'd have Going Home from this album on the car stereo played loud. Got me right there. It was absolutely fantastic. So I absolutely love that album and that tune today. Right, 2 to go. Second best album of 1983. And this is Punch the Clock by Elvis Costello. Now, I've got mixed feelings about early Elvis Costello. I love his debut, but the more punkified second and third albums, kind of brilliant singles, but I'm not sure they held together as an album. But then he had his departure where he did the Almost Blue country album, and then he came back, and this was one of the albums that soon followed. This has great singles. Every Day I Write the Book on it, but it feels fully realized. The musical, the instrumentation here, that it seems much broader. The songs seem bigger sounding almost. So you've got Let Them All Talk opens, Every Day I Write the Book, as I said, Love Went Mad, Shipbuilding, which was covered, of course, by Robert Wyatt, famously, TKO, Charm School, Pills and Soap, I think about the Falklands War, as was Shipbuilding. But yeah, you're just a great album. So that is the second best album of 1983. And finally, I don't know how long this video has been going on, but you know me, they always go on a bit long. The best album of 1983, the most impactful album to me, was Synchronicity by The Police. What an album. Loved their first 2 albums. Fantastic, and they were fantastic live. Zenyatta Mondatta and Ghost in the Machine seemed flawed to me, even though the latter sounded really big and far departure from the more simplistic and sparse sounding first couple of albums. But this is you can definitely see why Sting left, because these songs are epic, almost every single one of them, and they're only let down by is it Miss Gradenko, which I think is Stuart Copeland's, and Mother by Andy Summers. But yeah, everything else on here is absolutely amazing. The Synchronicity 1 and 2 are fantastic. Walking in Your Footsteps, Every Breath You Take, of course, King of Pain, Wrapped Around Your Finger, Tea in the Sahara, Side 2 is absolutely amazing. And I remember seeing them on this tour at Leeds Queen's Hall in December of 1983, getting back to Newcastle about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning and going to work, you know, 8 o'clock that next morning. I've never sweated so much at a gig before or since. We were right down the front and it was fantastic. So yeah, the best album of 1983 is Synchronicity by The Police. Right. I've been thinking about doing 1983 for a couple of weeks, so finally got around to doing it. So there we go. Got a couple more videos in the planning. Of course, 1984 will follow shortly. Big year for me, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video. And more serious video coming up in November. So for those of you who are interested in things in addition to music, so that'll come when it'll come. So thanks for watching this one. If you made it this far, once again, thank you ever so much. Those of you who've kind of tuned into all the videos or subscribed, fantastic, absolutely brilliant. I love it. And it's brilliant to make connections with people through these videos. So long may all of this continue. So thanks for watching again, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye for now.